One of our top stories this morning. A southwestern Montana woman is hospitalized in critical condition after a weekend shooting that left another woman dead. The family of 32-year-old Ashley Van Hemert told the Bozeman Daily Chronicle she was in surgery yesterday after being shot Sunday at a home in Belgrade, about 10 miles northwest of Bozeman. Lyle Van Hemert of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, said his daughter suffered a gunshot wound, a broken arm, broken ribs, and punctured lungs. The shooting was reported Sunday morning. Officers said 35-year-old Lauren Walder DeWise died at the scene. A person who was taken into custody has since been released. Police Chief E.J. Clark did not say why. A Missoula woman who recently had her car stolen tracked down her vehicle in the 2200 block of West Broadway on Monday. Missoula Police spokesman Travis Welch explains what happened when police arrived.
When they arrived, they encountered a group of people, one of whom identified herself as an owner of a vehicle that was at the center of the disturbance. She claimed that the vehicle had been stolen the night before and that they had spotted it on the street yesterday morning and followed it to the current location. They had detained a male driver and called 911.
Less than 5 months ago, Missoula police arrested 28-year-old Jay Vallejo for theft and felony drug possession after he was caught in a stolen car with methamphetamine. This arrest turned out to be eerily similar.
Officers conducted a street interview with the driver, who was identified as 28-year-old Jay Vallejo, and subsequently arrested him for theft of the car as well as for possession of dangerous drugs after it was heard that he had a syringe loaded with what appeared to be methamphetamine in his pants pocket.
Though similar, there are some major differences with this arrest. The vehicle Vallejo was accused of stealing in September was a 1991 Honda Accord, valued at under $1,500, so it was a misdemeanor. This time, Vallejo was riding in a 2016 Toyota Corolla and will be facing felony theft charges. When he was at the jail, it was also discovered the boots that Vallejo was wearing were also stolen, so he's getting a misdemeanor theft charge as well. January is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Police Detective Guy Baker with the Missoula Police Department said sex trafficking occurs everywhere, even in Missoula.
People commonly don't see a difference between prostitution and sex trafficking, where, simply put, it's choice. So a prostitute is engaging in commercial sex at their own volition for their own benefit, where a victim of trafficking is someone who is being compelled through force, fraud, or coercion to engage in commercial sex, and somebody else is benefiting from that.
Baker said the Internet is the trafficking site of choice for those involved in the sex trade.
The vast majority of trafficking is occurring online, so on a variety of websites such as Backpage or MyProvider.com, or there's about half a dozen sites that solicit customers for prostitution, in which trafficking victims are acting in that capacity.
Baker said the toll can be significant for those who work to stem the tide of sex slavery and human trafficking, but there are some rays of hope, as he encountered when he worked with a woman to try to help free her from human trafficking.
When talking to her to tell her that the case was going to be resolved without her testifying, which she was very much afraid of doing, she started crying and said, Detective Baker, I don't know where I'd be today if you had not come into my life. So little things like that, and one individual helped, is a great sense of satisfaction for me, so it's well worth it.
Baker said there'll be a conference in Missoula in March to address the issue of sex slavery and human trafficking. This past week, the Montana Department of Revenue Director Mike Cadis claimed there was, quote, a strong possibility, end quote, that Montana would need to hold yet another special legislative session in order to respond to the passing of tax changes by the federal government. Hamilton Area Legislator Nancy Balance serves on the Interim Revenue Committee and said no one else seems to be making the same claim as Cadis.
I think that Director Cadis got kind of out in front of himself on that particular statement, and it does not, as far as anything that I can find, it doesn't represent the thoughts of the administration or the executive. Anyone that is involved in looking at the impacts of the federal tax law is not anticipating even beginning a discussion about a special session.
Balance expects there to be some unexpected impacts of the new tax law, some of which may have already taken place for those rushing to take advantage of deductions scheduled to be phased out.
My guess is what we're probably going to see is December collections that are up higher than what we anticipated. But then we got to watch January to see whether that was a move that happened just to to get those deductions that were available in 17 and not in 18.
Montana's revenue forecast is murky at this point as experts try to predict how taxpayers will respond to the new law and how that law meshes with Montana state tax laws. A revenue committee meeting is scheduled for March. Balance expects to have a much more clear picture by then. In a related story, there are some big changes for Montana taxpayers this year. Not only was the federal tax system overhauled recently, but there have been some modifications at the Montana Department of Revenue as well. Public Information Officer Mary Ann Dunwell says a new website for tax filings will be up and running next week.
This 2018 state income tax filing season, the department is able to offer some new and improved online options. We have a new website that's going to launch Tuesday, January 16, and it will be a lot easier for folks to use and find what they're looking for.
It's out with the old and in with the new at the Department of Revenue's paper copies of tax booklets also get the axe.
You probably heard about the state budget cuts and required reductions in services. If we don't have the money, we have to pick and choose what services we can offer. And we've had to make the decision that we're not going to be printing hard copies of the tax booklets this season. That'll actually save us about $60,000.
If you still want to do your taxes on paper, Dunwell says you can still print out the files and send them in, or call the Department of Revenue and they can print up a copy and mail it to you. Although $60,000 may sound like a lot, Dunwell says, quote, it's a drop in the bucket, unquote, compared to the millions in cuts the Department of Revenue is already facing. Our news talk time now is 6:12.
Newstalk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station. A wintry mix of rain and snow will change to all snowfall as we head throughout the day. A light accumulation of a dusting to half an inch will be possible. Temperatures will be in the low 30s. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for Missoula's KECI 13.